Okay, this is Unit 5, Lesson 1. The vocabulary review. What is an integer? Who can tell me what an integer is? I'll give you an example of a type of number. Integer is a type of number. I'll give you an example that you might remember. Rational numbers. Who remembers what a rational number is? Anybody remember what a number that is? We could call it a rational number if we can write it as a... I think I heard it. As a fraction. So remember, a number that is rational is a number that you can write as a fraction. Remember, you have repeating decimals. It can be written as a fraction. Or any whole number can be written as a fraction also, right? So that would be a rational number. But let's talk about integers. Who can tell me what an integer is? So that was kind of my hint for you. Kayla? An integer can be a negative number, but you know what? A rational number can also be a negative number, right? Isn't negative 1/3 and then a third? Those are both rational numbers, right? And they're written as a fraction. You could write them as a non-terminating repeating decimal. What else do we have here? Nathan? Okay, so a whole number in the positive, that is an integer, but that is a subgroup of integers called the natural numbers. So positive whole numbers are the natural numbers. But integers include their opposites, okay? So positive and negatives. But integers also include one more number that natural numbers don't include. 0, very good. So an integer is a whole number and their opposites, so negative numbers, and 0. Now, number 2 is easy. We had to arrange number 2 and 3, these sets from least to greatest. Number 2 should have been super easy. I'm not even going to ask for you guys to tell me your answers. Just compare and make sure you got this correct. I expect everybody in here to be able to order a set of positive numbers from least to greatest. Now, we have the number line in the class. I invite you to use it during the lessons. And I even leave them up during the quiz to get things right mentally on ordering numbers. Okay, we have the number line. Take a look. Okay, now, what is the least value in my set for number 3? What is the smallest value? Or the minimum value? Do you guys remember the word minimum? Yeah. Okay, or another word that's the same as minimum, lower extreme. Okay, I'm trying to get you guys to remember these vocabulary words. What's the lower extreme or the minimum value? Negative 47. You guys agree? Negative 47. Very good. That is the smallest number in my set. And then what's the next smallest number in the set? Adipoju. Negative 43. And then what else? Who's got the next one? 41. I'm just going to go and cover the rest. I think you guys are good. Any questions? Okay. If you messed up, do you guys understand where you messed up so we don't make that mistake again? Any questions about this? Okay, question? Okay, now let's go through this, and I want us to think about a word. The word is frequent, and I want to ask you what that word means in a moment, but first we're going to read through what you'll learn. So this is what we're going to learn today. To represent data using frequency tables, there's that word frequency. It's another form of the word frequent. And then line plots and histograms, okay? Students typically confuse these 3 things, so I want to make sure they get this right today. New vocabulary: frequency table, line plot, histogram. Why learn this? When you count the number of times a particular event or item occurs, you measure frequency. You can use frequency to analyze events such as extreme weather events. Okay? A frequency table is a table that lists each item in a data set and the number of times each item occurs. Can somebody tell me, what does the word frequent mean to you? Nathan, thank you for raising your hand. What is it? Did you just say that because you heard somebody else call out? That was your answer? That is the correct answer. Okay. Frequent means something occurs often, right? Or more than once, right? Does that make sense? Infrequent means what? Not often, not very often. Okay, so frequency is talking about how often something occurs. So if something happens, doesn't happen at all, the frequency would be 0. No, it wouldn't happen at all, 0 frequency. Okay, so frequency is how often something occurs. So we're talking about frequency tables. So here's what I want you guys to do. If you guys remember from first semester when we were talking about data sets and analyzing data sets, mean, median, mode, box whisker plots, you guys remember those things, stem leaf plots? Okay, we're going to cover those again. If you forgot, we're going to review those things again. What I want you guys to do, take a look at this example. We're going to be making a frequency table. Hurricanes. The data below shows the number of hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean each year for a period of 30 years. Make a frequency table of the data. Okay, first thing I need you to do, now there are many ways that we can do this, but I'm going to give you a way, and then if you have a better strategy that works for you, fine, you could use that strategy that works for you. It might not be the same strategy for somebody else, but the first strategy I want you to use is arranging the data from least to greatest. Start by doing that. And some of you guys might find that challenging because the list of numbers is on your paper and you can't mark it off, so what are you going to do? Come up with a strategy. Okay, questions? Yes? Go ahead. Yep, Quinn. Minimum, what? The minimum number? I don't think I see one in that set. But right now I want you guys to arrange this least to greatest. Least to greatest. Yes, least to greatest. Question? Yes. Okay, so let's see, check with what I have posted here, that you have it arranged from least to greatest. Okay, but I want you guys to explain to me, how would you check that your ordered set is the same as mine? How would you go about doing that? I think that's important for what we're about to do, which is, how would you check that your ordered set is a match for mine? Kalila. Okay, so for each value, she said that she has the same number of that particular value. Okay, well, more specifically, for what we're covering today, she was telling me that her list has the same frequency of values for each value. So here are my numbers that occur in my set. Okay, there are no jumps. So we have every number represented from 2 to 11. Now, if you had a number that skipped, you would still have to show that number just your tally mark, if you took a tally of each. You guys remember tally marks? Okay, so I have 2 tally marks. Where's tally marks today? Okay. All right, 3 tally marks for 3, 4, or actually 6 for 4, 5 for 5, and so on. And then my frequency would be the number of tally marks for each number. Okay? Any questions about that? You have a question? Okay. How many of you guys got that right? Okay. How many of you guys just maybe forgot what a frequency chart is, but now you know and it's pretty easy? Right? Easy stuff, right? Okay. Moving along. Now that you've seen a frequency table, I said frequency chart, I meant table. I want for you to make your own frequency table from this set of data. Tori. Uh-huh. Okay. If you have all 3, it can't hurt. Okay? I just want you to be ready for the type of questions they'll have you. Because remember, we're using the book, and then we have the Connexus lesson, and I'm trying to merge the 2 so that we're ready. Okay? And just like I've said with the word minimum, right? Sometimes some books will use lower extreme, least value. So I just want you guys to be prepared on the different ways they might ask you. Okay? Okay, so right now, you guys are going to make your own frequency table. Jameson, you should probably take something out to write on. You're not going to learn staring up at the sky. Okay, so how many of you guys have arranged your set from least to greatest already? Does anybody need more time? Okay, go ahead. Take a couple more minutes. If you've already ordered your set, go ahead and start making your frequency table. Sure, she's on her way.
Thank you.
Jayla, homework's posted for tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and reveal the order from least to greatest. Here's what you should have. Oops. Okay, so here are my numbers, but what do we notice about this set?
It's missing a 6.
It's missing a 6, but I still have a 6 in my list of numbers, right? And that's important because we need to understand that for my data set, when I do take a tally of each number, 6 has no tally marks, right? So the frequency for 6 is going to be 0. And then the other one's pretty obvious. Are we good? Easy stuff, right? So a day, looks like you have a question. We arranged our set from least to greatest. I had 5 number 1s. I had 2 number 2s. I had 4 number 3s, 2 number 4s, 3 5s, no 6s, okay? 2 7s, 2 8s, 2 9s, okay? Really easy, okay? If you're not paying attention, you're making something easy difficult. All right, now, the next thing we need to talk about, a line plot. Now, a line plot is a graph that shows the shape of data of a data set by stacking x's above each data value on a number line. So, we're going to take our data from the first example that we already arranged from least to greatest, and we're going to create a number line, and for every number, we're going to stack x's above it that represent how many times that number occurred in the data set. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, so can you guys go ahead and make a line plot for me?
That's from the first one.
Yep, that's the first example we did, yes. So you're just making a line plot of that example. So many of you already have the frequency table. Now we need to make a line plot. This one is just an example. It's not this. The one on the dry erase board is not. It's not the same. So you need to make one from this data set.
Is that supposed to be an example?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, they can just start at your least value or your minimum or your lower extreme. So they could start at that number. Okay? That's a good question, though. Okay, it looks like most of you are still writing. I'm going to give you about another minute. When you're done, put your pencils down. Okay, just a few more people trying to finish up. Here is my line plot. So if you notice, Trinity had a good question. She said, hey, do I have to start my number line at 1? No. You can start it at the smallest value, the least value, the minimum, in this case 2. And we see that there's a frequency of 2 for the number 2, so we have 2 x's above 2. If you look for, which one has, what's nice about a line plot is you should be able to really quickly say which number had the most frequency. Which number had the most frequency? 4. The highest frequency went to 4, okay? Yep.
So you can start off at the least number, but you can't skip any?
Right.
Okay.
Did you hear what her question was? Start off at the least number, but don't skip any when you have your number line. Okay? All right, any questions about our line plot? Now, we're going to talk about, this one was just the same example from earlier. Now we're going to talk about histograms, making a histogram. So what I want you guys to do is we're going to make a histogram. And for our histogram, we're going to use the same data from earlier, but now we're making a histogram. Can I get somebody, actually I'm going to read since I'm putting this up on the message board. A histogram is a bar graph with no spaces between the bars. The height of each bar shows the frequency of data within that interval. The intervals of a histogram are of equal size and do not overlap. Okay, now a histogram is a little different than, it's actually not a little, it's quite a bit different than a line plot. A line plot is x's represent each value. A histogram says, hey, I'm going to put a couple values together and I'm going to add their frequencies together. Does that make sense? But in this example, the intervals, or the number of values that they put together 2 and 3. Okay, since they put together 2 values and their frequencies, they had to be consistent for all of the other values. Do you understand? So for the first interval was 2 and 3, 2 numbers. For the second interval was 4 and 5, 2 numbers. Then 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10 and 11. Now, they didn't change it at all for the intervals. It was 2 values for each interval. And then they added up those frequencies. So let me show you what I'm talking about, because I can see by the look on your faces that seems a little bit confusing. So look, here's 2 and 3, right? How many values are there? 5. Isn't this 5? 5. Oops, I don't know what's going on, but something ain't right. Might be time to retire this thing. Okay, and then do you see for the group, do you see for the interval of 4 through 5, do you see what's happening there? So how many numbers, what's the frequency of 4 and 5 put together? 11. So if you take a look here, it's 11, okay? And then the next interval would include 6 and 7. How many do we see for 6 and 7? 6. Okay, and then we have 8 and 9, right? Which is 6 again. And then we have 10 and 11, which is just 2. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, it's possible you could have said intervals of 3 numbers, but you had to be consistent across the board. Does that make sense? And if you didn't have a number, you would just include that in the interval. So say for that example that didn't have 6, I'd still say 6 to 7, 6 and 7. Do you understand? And 6 obviously didn't have anything to contribute between 6 and 7, but you would have that as an interval. Okay, so here's what my frequency or histogram looks like. The y-axis is the frequency. If you notice for 2 to 3, we have a frequency of 5. So I have a bar that has that's up to 5. And there's no spaces between these bars. It's a bar graph. Okay, for 4 and 5, my frequency is 11, so my bar goes up to 11. For 6 through 7, my frequency is 6, so my bar goes to 6. 8 and 9, my frequency is 6 again. And 10 through 11, my frequency is 2. Okay? Now, somebody earlier asked me, Mr. Headley, do I have to use the same intervals for my y-axis that you use? No, you could have used 0. You could have gone by increments of 1 for the y-axis. Okay, I just skipped some of those. Okay, any questions about this? Question, Joshua? Yes. Actually, no, you were late. Next person.
Do you need to do the histogram and the
Histogram. Now, this is a frequency table, but it's broken down by intervals, right? So it's still a frequency table. Just know that if they want you to represent data as a histogram, don't confuse it with a line plot, okay? That's where I see students messing up, okay? Any other questions about histograms? Now what I'd like for you to do is make a histogram from this data set. And this one's not quite as obvious as the example. So if you're not sure, please try. It's okay to make a mistake now. Part of learning involves making mistakes. Question? Good question. I had the other class ask me. This isn't two different sets. This is one set. I just started a new row for the next set of numbers. Okay, this is all one set of numbers. Yep. Yeah.
So like if we're doing what's 20 and 22.
Just try it for now. We're going to go over the answer in a little bit. This is where you take the example we just did and roll with what you know from that example. Question? Yep, when she gets back. Okay, by now you should have arranged this from least to greatest. You should have something like this. That's the order from least to greatest. Now, there are a couple intervals that you can use. Can somebody give me the one they chose? What interval did you choose? How many values in your interval? Could you put your notebook on your desk, please? How many values in your interval, Kalila? So all the 20s? Or just, you said 3?
3.
Okay, so you did, what were the numbers in your first interval?
20, 22, 24.
Okay, so if you're saying 20, 22, and 24, your interval is actually 20 through 24. So that also includes the numbers that are in between. So that would be 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So how many is that?
All those numbers out when I'm filling up.
That would be your full interval. So from 20 to 24, and it would include the numbers in between. Does that make sense? Does anybody else have an interval for me? So Kalila had one. That's a possibility. Does anybody have another interval that they can use for the data? Did anybody use an interval of 2 like the last example? 2 numbers? Now the problem with using 2 numbers, 20 and 21, would be one interval. 22 and 23 would be another interval. You would have a lot of bars, right? So you don't want to have too many bars. You don't want to have too few bars. Okay, so let me show you. And we're going to have a lesson later on choosing the best display data. Okay, so here are my intervals. Take a look. So my interval is how many numbers for each interval? Take a look. My first interval is 20 to 29. How many numbers are in that interval? Let's start out with 20. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. How many is that from 20 to 29? That's 10 numbers in that interval. Understand? Let me give you what somebody in the previous class said. They said, hey, my interval's from 20 to 30. And then my next interval is 30 to 40. And then my next interval is 40 to 50. Well, you have overlapping intervals and you can't do that. Do you guys understand? I can't say 20 to 30 and then say 30 to 40 in the next one. There's not supposed to be any overlap. So if you notice, in 20 to 29, how many numbers were in the 20s? We saw 8. I'm almost done. Almost done. So do you see how we group our numbers that way? In the first block of 10, from 20 to 29, I had 8. And then I got another block from 30 to 39. How many numbers in that range of 10 for that interval? Well, how many? Somebody? Say again? 4. So from 30 to 39, I had 4 numbers in that range. Okay? What about in the 40s, from 40 to 49? We have 3. Okay? And then in the 50s, how many do I have in the 50s? You say I got 2. And then what about in the 60s? 2 again. Okay? And then what about the 70s? Just got 1. Nicholas. Behind Kayla, please. Okay, any questions about the frequency table to represent the intervals? Okay, now what I need you to do is I need you guys to make a histogram using those intervals, just like we showed in the previous example. So now I need you to make a histogram. When I'm done, we're not done yet, unless you have a question about the material. Draw up your bar graphs, because that's all a histogram is. It's a bar graph that in a bar, the bar represents the frequency for that interval. So my first bar, from 20 to 29, we see that we have 8. And you see from my y-axis, that's the frequency. So my bar goes up to 8. For the interval from 30 to 39, we have a frequency of 4. So my bar went up to 4. And notice there's no gaps between the bars. Are we good? For my 40 range, we have 3. 50s, you said 2. 60s, we said 2 again. In the 70s, we said 1. So, do you see the difference between a histogram and a line plot? A line plot does every single value. A histogram groups up values. Does that make sense? And it makes a bar out of that group. Do you understand the difference? Okay. Last slide. You're going to use this data from this frequency table first to make a line plot. So we should walk out of here. Everybody at this point should know how to make a line plot. I'm giving you the frequency table. You're making one of these right here with that. Okay, in case you already forgot, make sure you get your minds right for the quiz, what a line plot is and what a histogram is. Okay, what's unique about this graph from the ones you've seen earlier? What makes this one, what characteristic of this line plot is going to make this unique from the ones that we've seen earlier? What are some things that jump out at us? Say, some people are kind of mumbling things. Raise your hand. Add something into the pot. You got nothing to say about what the line plot's going to look just from this tally, these tallies? Oh man. And this is easy too. Come on. Adipoji, what were you mumbling back there? There's no 18. So you're not going to have any what on the number line above 18. You're not going to have any x's above 18. Right? Not all of them had a gap. This one had one. Some of the examples I gave you had one. Right? From this line plot, you can immediately tell which one had the most frequency, right? Which one had the most frequency? 15. Okay, the last thing you need to do is from that same frequency chart or table, make a histogram. You got to choose your interval, make your bar graph. That's your histogram. That's the last thing we got to do before we leave out of here. You haven't written any of this down, so don't ask me to go anywhere. Nope.
I have.
Show me. Show me that you have the line plot, and show me that you have a histogram. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You get asked the next person, because you still haven't shown me what this last thing we gotta do is.
I know what that is.
I didn't say do you know. You say you know a lot of things. I need to see that you can do it, because that's what matters. Can you do it? What interval did you choose? Nathan, how many numbers did you put in each interval? What was the range of numbers for you to make your histogram? Okay, but before you make it, you got to decide, like, how many numbers am I going to put for each bar? right? That's the first step. Now for a histogram, you don't want to do that. You might as well just make a line plot, because a line plot does the frequency for each value. A histogram does more than just one. Like the last one, we did 10, right? 10 numbers. Henry, haven't heard from you yet. Go ahead. What are your intervals going to be? Well, we want to make a bar graph, right? And each bar needs to represent how many numbers? You're going to do 2? Okay. So if you did 2, that means your first bar would be 15 and 16, right? Your second bar would be 17 and 18. Your third bar, 19 and 20. Your fourth bar, 21 and 22. And then your last bar would be the last 2. Okay, that's one way you could have done it. Here's what my bar graph is going to look like, my histogram. My first bar, here it is. Boom. The frequency of 15 added to the frequency of 16. My next bar, 17 and 18. Those two values, the frequency of those two numbers added together. 3. 19 and 20. And if you notice, even though I don't have 18, I still include that in my interval. Does that make sense? Question?
Is there any scenarios
Where you would use a range? Wouldn't use a range? You're always going to have an interval, a start and an end for each interval. Does that make sense? So range, this isn't subtraction. This is 19 through 20. Just like earlier, it was 20 through 29. Okay? So when they talk about interval, they are talking about like this span or this range, as you put it. Okay? There is no quick check. There is a homework assignment with this.